Well, we'll start. He's getting me a click or something. So we did a presentation for Restore about hygiene, and it went over very, very well. And so I wanted to kind of expand on that topic and talk about it a little bit more and add some more information, because as we help people work with their mental health and as we help them rehabilitate, hygiene is a big topic. And many of you have probably run into that. Am I right? And I've run into it too, whether it's in this kind of context or whether it's in like even my private practice context. There's some things about hygiene that are really interesting. For me, as a therapist and as a mental health counselor, hygiene can be difficult to deal with for some very obvious reasons. It's kind of offensive. It's difficult to concentrate because you can't think about what you're trying to do because you're overwhelmed with your senses, right? But I think for me, it helps when I'm talking about hygiene to be curious. Because for me, the reason I like mental health and the reason I'm very interested in this stuff is everything that a client does teaches you something about the way that their mind works. And so each of these little things are clues that tell me something about what's going on inside that person's head. And so I want to share with you some of these little secrets that I've found in my work, and maybe it can help you understand not only what you're perceiving, but what that really means about that person. So let's kind of get into it. So I want to start. I'm not like going to lecture the whole time. I want to get some back and forth. What are some of the hygiene struggles that you've noticed here? I know what's in my private practice, but what do we notice maybe the most? And just shout it out.
Apartments.
Showers. Apartments?
Yeah, they leave stuff unclean in the apartments.
Yeah.
Body odor.
Body odor. Yeah. Anything else? Any standout stories?
I have one. We had one person that the apartment, they had like urine and feces, and they
In the apartment?
Yeah, and they smelled really bad, and we had to bring a plumber because maintenance couldn't fix the problem, and the plumber now refused to come back.
Uh-oh. So bad the plumber refused to come back.
Yep.
Yep. Any others?
Sometimes people just don't like to shower.
Yeah, don't like to shower.
Especially if they're coming from the streets and they're not used to showering.
Yeah. And sometimes that can be like, I love my showers. It's my mental reset. Sometimes it's such a stressful day, I need 2 showers. One to reset my mind in the morning, one to reset in the evening, just because I'm stressed. So to me, that's like, I don't understand how someone would live their life in that way because my life is so different. So it's gotten me curious, and I want to understand what this person may be going through. Now, do you notice any personalities that struggle with it the most? Like when you notice someone who's struggling with their hygiene and their mental health in that way, is there a certain type of person? Is there a certain type of personality that you notice? Any characteristics that stand out? Depression? Yeah? Anything else? Schizophrenia? Yeah. I've noticed sometimes anxious too. But yeah. Some physical limitations. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Well, not recently, maybe a few months ago, I talked to a client about her hygiene, which is really hard, but it comes to find out she has an incontinence problem.
Oh, okay. So it turned out to be an incontinence problem. Yeah. And those conversations can be kind of embarrassing and awkward, right? And that's one of the difficult things. So I think for me, like, again, I'm going back to this theme throughout this whole presentation of curiosity, because I think curiosity can help us kind of work through some of those embarrassing conversations. Instead of feeling, weird about it or uncomfortable about it, it's just like, well, I'm not here to judge. I just want to know what's going on. Tell me about it. Let me listen. Let me figure this out. How did you handle some of these situations? And did it work? Yeah.
Well, I asked her what I can do for her. She was using the facility. And from there, she said no, that she usually gets her supplies from her insurance. And I kept that communication open with her to let her know that I'm always here if she needs anything.
Nice. So kind of seeing, all right, well, I'm noticing a problem. How are we addressing this problem? Do you need some help? I'm here to do it. Anything else? What's kind of worked for you? What works, what doesn't work when you're talking with people about hygiene? Any thoughts?
Honest conversation.
Honest conversation. Yeah. It's a good one. We're going to get to communication here in a minute. A lot of times, because the topic of hygiene is embarrassing, people will kind of dance around the problem and not really say it directly. And that can be difficult for somebody who maybe is, like I say, with schizophrenia or with a dissociative problem. It can be very difficult for them to understand what you mean because it's already difficult for them to attach to the real world and the conversation. So if we're embarrassed by the conversation and dancing around the topic, well, they might not even understand. We think, okay, we talked to them about hygiene. They got it. And no, they don't. They didn't get it. That can be a difficult one.
Well, can I say something?
Please.
I know I understand about the hygiene stuff, like what you were saying. I came in between, so I was getting water.
Oh, okay.
But what I was saying about, it's a proper way to say it to the client.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's a proper way and wrong way.
Absolutely. I think judgment's a huge part of that.
But the thing about it, again, they have a mental problem.
Mm-hmm.
And in the head, you got to be careful how to approach it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's what I'm excited. We're going to get to that here about the communication because I think that's a huge part of this. So let's get curious. Let's talk about emotional signals. Everything you observe about a client or about, a member here is telling you something. And if you can start to learn and look a little bit deeper into those things, it can really teach you a lot and it can help you understand how to communicate effectively with them. So awareness. Does this person recognize their own hygiene issues? One of my favorite stories, I work and specialize with dissociative identity, right? So this is what they used to call multiple personalities. And so I had a situation where I'm working with somebody, and this has happened several times. Actually, they come into my office, and I'm like, whoa, we're dealing with a hygiene problem here. And most of the time, I'll just bring it up, right? I want to be honest, I want to be clear, but I want to say it without judgment. I'll be like, hey, I'm having a very difficult time concentrating right now because I'm really smelling something. Did you take a shower this morning? When was the last time you took a shower? And they'll tell me like, well, I took a shower this morning. I was like, well, let's talk about this because it doesn't smell like you took a shower this morning. Now, it doesn't change the way I feel about you, and I want to reassure that situation, reassure that connection, right? I care about you. This doesn't change my opinion of you. But I hear you say you took a shower this morning, but it doesn't smell like you took a shower this morning. So let's problem solve this together. Well, come to find out, there was one of their multiple personalities that was responsible for hygiene. And I don't know what happened, but they didn't show up that day to the office. Somebody else was piloting the ship, okay? And so they were like, oh, yeah, well, this person takes care of hygiene every morning. Well, they didn't show up. So we had an honest conversation. That was a great awareness to them. Oh, okay, something with my system has changed. And that was helpful. So this could be a time for empathetic education. They didn't know. They're used to going through this routine inside themselves with this client of mine, and they didn't know that the routine had been thrown off its tracks. And so by just being honest, but being honest with empathy, it was able to show them, hey, you're maybe going through something that you didn't even really realize. And it helped them kind of put things back together. Okay, great. Because without that feedback from those people around them, it can be a real struggle to understand what you may be going through. I mean, every human being at our foundation is really built to be relational. We're meant to understand ourselves by feedback from other human beings. If we were just alone, in the woods and living our life, it wouldn't matter, right? But we learn who we are based on our interactions. And so this is what's just so important, because when I show up in a room, I'm learning right now what my value is by how each of you are looking at me and how each of you are paying attention to me. I'm like, okay, I must be giving something valuable to everyone in this room because people are listening, people are engaging. When somebody shows up in the room and they may not know that they have a hygiene problem, it can really affect their self-esteem and it can really affect the way that they relate to other people because, when someone smells bad, you kind of make this face. And so they're walking around and every time they see somebody new, they make this face. And they might not even know it's a hygiene thing. They're just, man, I'm just a real piece of garbage. And it could be really tough. So that honest communication, hey, no, I care about you. I'm glad that you're here. It's just the shower thing. A stick of deodorant would go a long way. It would be great. But this is one of the things that not only is hygiene a topic, but it can really feed into mental health because it connects with a human being on multiple levels here. So emotional, right? What is this saying to us? Emotional. Does this signal an internal emotional struggle, right? We brought up depression. We brought up anxiety. We brought up dissociative symptoms, right? So it could be that they're not aware, but it could also be a sign of some greater emotional trouble. And that's where you kind of, talk with one of us, get them connected to a counselor and see what's really going on there. And there could be a lot of reasons for this. Depression can have a lot to do with feelings of worthlessness. So it's like, well, what's the use of taking a shower? I don't matter anyway, Or anxiety. A lot of people with anxiety or paranoia can be like, well, I'm not going to take all my clothes off and get in the shower. Like, I need to be ready all the time. I need to be hypervigilant. I can't stop and take a shower because I got to be ready. Now, that can also be a symptom, not just paranoia. It could be a symptom of trauma. What if somebody had a situation where, because of some kind of physical assault or sexual assault, I don't want to take my clothes off and get in the shower because that's a traumatic situation that I've been hiding from for a very long time. So this hygiene is so much deeper than just what it smells like. It can be so many emotional levels. And that's what really fascinates me as a counselor, because it gets curious. What's going on inside this person's head? And then relational. We touched on this just a minute. Does this signal a relational problem? Can go both ways, though. How am I relating to other people? We learn how to, even how I'm dressed, even how you're dressed. We're all wearing green today, right? That's because we're relating together. Well, except for me. I missed the memo. We're participating in a group activity. It's St. Patrick's Day, so we're all wearing green. That connects us. That's a relationship. It may not be like a deep relationship, but it's like, okay, we're all part of the same, part of the same group. We're celebrating the same holiday. That means a lot. If somebody is struggling with their hygiene or struggling with the way that they clothe themselves, it shows that they're struggling to really connect with the group as a whole. Which, if you think about our population, those people that we're working with, that's one of the key foundational struggles that they have, is how am I relating to community as a whole? So, like I said, it can go both ways. Sometimes it can be, I just don't know how to connect with people. I just don't know how to bring people close, and I don't know what it is about myself that's offensive. But it can also be on purpose. If you've ever met a stinky teenager, they're like, well, my parents told me to take a shower, but I'm an independent individual. I don't want to take a shower. I'll take a shower when I feel like it. So it can be both ways, right? That one connected over here. But it can also be with depression, not only feelings of worthlessness, right? Like, I'm not worth taking a shower, but it can also be, like when it comes to depression and trauma, I don't want people to get close. People are dangerous. People hurt me. So if I'm offensive, I'm safe. That's deep. That's deep. Okay, environment. And we talked about this. I was thinking, man, there's got to be some crazy stories about people in their apartments. The way a person organizes their possessions communicates a lot about how their mind works. So not only talking about what's on my body, but also talking about how I organize those things that are in my domain of control, right? And that's my apartment, that's my stuff. And I think one of the things you'll see, different populations, but you'll see they've got this term, the bag lady, right? Someone's got all this stuff, or they're pushing around their shopping cart or their wheelbarrow with all their things in it, right? And you can see that can be huge sign of trauma. It can be a huge sign of anxiety. It can be a huge sign of paranoia. I have to keep all my stuff here. I can't let anything go. I got a story about my great-great-grandma. She lived through the Great Depression. And so she would keep every bread bag that she got from the grocery store, every plastic bag, because she learned that you don't throw anything away. You don't know when you'll need it. And so for her, the trauma of growing up and living through the Depression, where she only had 2 dresses, a nice one for Sunday and one you wore every other day. You don't throw anything away. And so that lesson stayed with her, and she never threw anything away. She's a bit of a hoarder sometimes. But you can see these life experiences show up in our observations of the way that people organize their stuff. Now, it can be mental as well. Maybe this person just doesn't understand how to organize their things, right? ADHD can be a big one. There's a big term floating around in the ADHD community called doom piles. And maybe I'll call on the audience here a little bit. Doom piles are, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and I just keep these collections of things. There's one pile, there's like mail and paperwork and a book here, and then I've got my pens and my electronics over here, and then I've got that junk drawer over here in the kitchen that I don't even know what's in it, right? Does anybody have, I'm bad with doom piles. Anybody got a doom pile? Yeah. So it's like, okay, but my poor wife, who's very organized and clean, it's telling her something about the way my brain works. And the more doom piles I got, the more stressed I am. It's teaching something. So she knows, you're like, Jesse, I'm not going to be mad at you, but you got to clean up a little bit, all right? Your backpack's over there, your shoes are over there. Just let's take a moment. You're stressed. She knows. She can tell, right? Oh, there it goes. And then community, right? How I organize my stuff indicates how I'm creating space for others in my life, right? So me, the stuff that I'm wearing, how am I connecting with others? But then also, these things and the space that I create in my life, am I creating and thinking about others in the way that I create space in my environment? It would be nice, and I think it's a very healthy thing to have space inside your house to entertain others, to bring people in, to feed them a meal. If somebody is visiting, you keep a spare bedroom, hopefully, something like that, or just some spare sheets so you can make up the air mattress or something like that, right? That's something that can be often taken for granted by those who have never struggled with homelessness or with financial problems. We kind of grow up knowing that, well, I need to keep space for others. That's a big part of community. It's a big part of my life to make sure that I can provide something positive for other people. Now, those who struggle with their self-esteem, with worthlessness, with homelessness, don't ever think about that thing because they don't think that anybody wants to be around them anyway. And so there's this huge educational piece that can kind of step in, not only of how to organize your life to be successful, but hey, you have the opportunity to bring something positive to other people, to hold space for them, to keep them safe. And by being that positive and by bringing that value to other people, you become more valuable yourself and you secure for yourself a place inside the community. I think that's a big one here. As I walk around some of the apartments here and some of the areas, I can see how everyone kind of cubby holes in their own spot. Nobody really comes out and talks and supports each other. And I don't think that's a fault of us. I think it's just a part of the struggle that we're talking about with this particular population. That's not something that they typically grow up with. That's not something that they typically are working through, because oftentimes about themselves, they feel so rejected that they never even think how they could be valuable to others. Planning, right? Am I planning for other people to be here? Does this person struggle to plan for the future, right? Or are they over-planning for the future, right? I can't let anything go. I got to keep everything together. I got to keep it all in one spot, and I'm hoarding stuff because I'm over-planning. I got to be ready for every possibility, which can be a huge indication of I don't feel worthy enough, right? I don't feel strong enough to handle life's problems. I need to be over-prepared because I feel this big, right? Or it could be I'm just not thinking about the future, which can also be a problem with employment and things like that. Safety and security, huge one with trauma, right? I'm keeping everything. I don't want to clean stuff up because I need to be hyper-vigilant all the time. I'm putting paper on my windows and doing all that stuff. Are they over-preparing, and do they fear settling down? Sometimes people keep everything in a backpack or in a wheel, something they can wheel around because they always want to be ready to move. There's this fear of actually settling down, organizing stuff, and putting it away. Can tell you a lot. So, let's go even a little bit deeper, right? We're talking about where people are in their present tense. But if you notice the way that people interact with their external objects, it can tell you a lot about how they grew up and where they became stuck. So there's three, I'm not going to go into, this could be a whole semester course, right? But let's talk about three key areas of a person's life: childhood, being a teenager, and being an adult. When you're a child, there's a huge developmental struggle that happens, right? Am I valuable, and can I trust others? Huge part of being a child. So if you've ever noticed, tell me, and you got nieces, nephews, kids, grandkids, whatever, you ever notice that little children just they wipe their boogers on you all the time? They're sneezing on you. They come up right next. I got this little niece, and I tell you, she's the cutest thing, but she'll come right up over to you and lay her head on you, and then, I'm like, what are you doing? I don't want to get out of here. It's kind of funny because they'll sneeze on you, they'll cough on you, they never cover in their mouths. They're just oozing all of them onto you. Have you ever noticed that? Anybody? Yeah, that's why children spread those germs all the time, because they're always doing that. You get it. But there's a reason for that, developmentally, right? Our bodies are the first area of creativity. So this goes back to some very old psychoanalytic, psychodynamic theory of mental health and psychotherapy. It's a very important moment in a child's life when they learn to poop. And then not only when they learn to poop, but when they learn to poop and put it in the potty. That's huge. Because as we kind of study this stuff, we find that when a child learns, they go to the bathroom and they see it in the potty and they're like, I made that. That's me. I am a creative, independent human being. Look at me. And it's, it sounds silly as an adult because we know, we know that we can do other things. But for a child, it's huge. And that's why we celebrate it, potty training, we reward them, we encourage this stuff. But this is why they often share that, children, with those people they care about the most. If you notice, they cough and sneeze on the one that they love and trust the most, right? And so you'll see, like we talked about with some of these environmental things, there's feces and urine everywhere in the apartment. Well, there's probably with that individual a developmental delay, some kind of stuckness or trauma during childhood. They want to express their creativity, but they haven't learned to balance that creativity and that self-expression with the needs of everyone else around them. And so there's some very interesting studies about some extreme schizophrenia where they'll be, coloring the walls with their poop. And they're like, what's that about? And it's like they're trying to express themselves, but they don't know how to express themselves in a way that is acceptable to others. And so you can see this childhood developmental delay in the way that they are caring for themselves and they're caring for their environment. Our bodies are the first area of creativity, and poop is creativity. I do a lot of content and talking about dreams. If you ever have a dream about like a pooping in a bathroom, or you ever had that dream where you're trying to go to the bathroom, but like the toilet is very public? Anybody? No? It's actually one of the top 10 dreams. But, or maybe not. But it can be very much about stuck creativity, right? Those people who have those kind of dreams, it can teach you a lot about, like, I want to be creative, I want to express myself, but I don't know how to do it, or I'm embarrassed to do it. So, teenagers, right? Huge developmental time. Now, I think a lot of parents, especially when I work with families, they kind of misunderstand teenagers because all teenagers rebel. And there's always conflict with teenagers. And that can be very easily misunderstood. Believe it or not, yeah, right, I'm getting some head nods. Believe it or not, rebelling as a teenager is very, very healthy and it's necessary. Because in a healthy developmental rebellion, what that child is doing is learning to individuate and learning to develop their own identity outside of that of their parents. So it's healthy to have that conflict, right? I'm as a child, hopefully, I'm doing what my parents say, right? It's like I go to bed at the time they tell me to go to bed. I wake up when they tell me, I eat what they give me. I go to the events that they tell me to do. But then as a teenager, I'm like, wait a minute, I have my own thoughts. I have my own opinions. And it's like, well, I see what mom and dad say, but, well, maybe I don't believe that. And so sometimes it can be just contrary, and most of the time it can be contrary just for the sake of contrary, right? But that's helpful. And if a parent, or in our case, if some, facility leaders are able to understand, okay, this person is being intentionally confrontational because there's a teenage holdup here, you can understand it's not about me. They're not trying to be mean to me in particular. I mean, it's coming across real strong to me, but it's all about they're trying to figure out who they are. And there's a lot of rules here. There's a lot of things that they have to follow. And so that natural kind of rebellion happens because they're trying to say, well, they tell me to clean up my room, that there's going to be room inspections, right? But why? Why is that important? And so they're learning to take this structure that we're providing them and internalize it to make their own value systems. So that way they take these lessons that we are creating for them with their structure and bring that into their job, bring that into the family that they create, right? Bring that into their relationships outside of here. So sometimes that can help me. I get curious, like, why are they being so confrontational to me? Did a sticker on my back, something? no, it's not about me, it's about them. They're trying to figure out who they are, and they're stuck, probably because of some trauma or some difficulty that happened during that phase of development. And then finally, adult, positive contribution. When you get to be an adult, you understand, hopefully, who you are, and then you learn to take that and give the gift back to the world. This is who I am, this is my identity, this is what makes me special, and I'm going to share that with everybody I come in contact with, right? Positive contribution. And this is where communication is so important. We'll get to this next. The hope is that someone learns that they develop and that they can give something positive to the community back, and that every time they show up in a room, they make people smile. Because that shows me I'm valuable. I have something good to contribute here. Okay, so how do we help? Let's get to the practical stuff. Empathy. I care about you no matter what, but I care enough to tell you. That's a tough line to balance. It can be difficult. I mean, I got to be honest, right? But when it comes to empathy, it's not just being nice. Nice is not empathy. Empathy is, I care about you, and there's a problem here, and I care enough to tell you. You smell bad. Like, doesn't change the way I feel about you. And sometimes I'll say it just like that. I'll be like, hey, I don't mean to be rude, but you smell bad. What's up with that? You know, I care about you a lot. Do you know that you smell bad? And they'll be like, oh, I didn't know. That's real empathy. Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
As a male employee and you have a female issue
Sure.
or smells,
It's a good
I
question.
would feel uncomfortable telling a female that. So how would a male employee tell a female a client about female issues or how I mean, I would feel uncomfortable doing that. So, so you as a therapist, how would you address that?
Yeah, so there's 2 points I want to make with that. So the question was, if I am male presenting, how do I help someone who's female presenting with female problems, right? That may be uncomfortable. 2 points with that. First, it depends on the case, right? Some people are very open, they're very free with that stuff. You know, it's okay to kind of confront them. Hey, just want to let you know, like, I'm noticing this, you know, maybe I can help you out, maybe I can get you connected, let's talk about it. Because you can kind of gauge there's some trust in that relationship. Now, some situations, they're not open to that. And I've had situations where people have gotten upset because, well, I don't share the same gender with them. And so that can come across as offensive. And that could be due to a lot of things. It could be because of a history of sexual trauma, or it could be anxiety, it could be depression, right? And so this gender mismatch makes it so I can't really confront that as well. So, one, you put your thinking caps on and be like, okay, what's the risk here? Is this person who's probably going to receive this well or not? Right? So we got to use a little critical thinking. But then the second thing is, if that's what's going on, then I would get, you know, a female person to kind of broach that with me. Just like, hey, I noticed this. Do you mind bringing that up with them?
But wouldn't you think and I want the females here, wouldn't that be uncomfortable for a male to come and tell? I mean, that's touching. I don't think any female here would want a male to come and tell them about that particular. I mean,
So I've actually had it both ways. I've had individuals who've had sexual trauma with a female. So like female sexual trauma with female, they're actually very
Like if
uncomfortable
the person's easy
having
going.
a female person kind of confront them. They've actually been more comfortable with a male confronting them. So it really does depend
Really?
case by case. Yeah, yes, it's true. But now, I mean, I would say the most common is female to female, right? So if you're feeling uncertain about it, and that would be kind of the second point, if you have some uncertainty and you're not feeling very comfortable, then just go talk to someone who's of the same gender, right? Because even if it's okay to talk to them about that, if you're feeling some hesitation and discomfort, that's going to come across in the way that you're communicating, right? So pay attention to your feelings too. If you don't feel good about it in your gut, don't do it.
okay.
That's a good one. Because even if they're okay with it, your hesitation will make them feel unsettled too. And that's why a therapist has to have a lot of confidence and a lot of calm, cool, collective empathy in the therapy room, because there's that feedback, right? What the emotions I feel, I'm probably going to bleed onto you. So that's a great question, though. That's a good one. And it gets to honesty and transparency, right? You don't have to fear my intentions. You can trust my words, and I will speak clearly to you. So that's the follow-through of empathy. Right? I don't have any ulterior motives. I don't have any hidden agenda. Right? And for some situations, like especially like I'm talking about sexual trauma, hygiene was used as a way to then sexually abuse them later. right? You gotta be clean, you gotta be maintained, you know, female beauty pageants and things like that, like they become sexualized because of all this hygiene stuff. And so almost falling away from that hygiene is a way for them to escape, protect themselves, and to fight against or to respond to that trauma, right? So I don't have any ulterior motives, right? You know, doesn't offend me. And even that individual I talked about, the story in the beginning, I said, well, you can't go home and take a shower now. You're at my clinical office, right? Let's go outside. We're gonna have a walking session today. And I told him, I was like, just simply because I can't concentrate, it's so strong of a smell, right? No offense when you get home, go take a shower, but we're gonna walk today. We're gonna get some fresh air. It's fine. I got no ulterior motives. It's clear communication. You can trust my words. That's what develops good relationships, especially with people who have struggled and been so shunned by society and community. Consistency. Be consistent in your words. If you say it one time, say it at the same time every time. Sometimes we can be afraid of being consistent. We can be nervous about telling them over and over again because we feel like we're nagging. Right? But if one day I tell you that you smell bad, and then that individual does the same thing, and the next day they show up still smelling bad, but I feel bad telling them twice because I told them yesterday, it's going to erode my consistency in communication. Right? So, hey, we talked about it. Pull them aside, don't do it in front of everybody else, but it's like, hey, we talked about this yesterday, you know, it seems like we're having the same problem, right? I want to be consistent with you. Because that's really where people learn how to become better. You can trust my presence, you can trust my personality. Every time you see me, if you smell bad, I react the same way. I'm a consistent pillar, cornerstone in your life. That's important. So don't be afraid, don't be embarrassed. That consistency is actually very therapeutic. Communication, my words are clear, and I have confidence and trust in you. Now that's big. I trust you enough to be honest with you. A lot of people don't communicate trustworthily. A lot of people don't communicate directly because there's some ulterior motive. So being direct and being honest helps quite a bit. And then reinforcement. When they show up smelling better, make a big celebration about it. When they make that improvement, man, pat them on the back, make sure that they know that you know, that you see the difference and that you appreciate it. Because again, the whole foundation of this is we want to get them from this avoidant kind of attachment to this positive attachment. Where it's like, hey, your actions make the world better. You smell great. Out, come over here, come sit next to me. You smell good. Wow, how healing is that to the soul? I will not shame you when you smell bad, right? But when you smell good, I want you around me. You make it better. You make me smile when you show up. So I will not shame you, but I will hold my boundaries, right? I'm going to be consistent with you because that's where the therapy happens. So we can talk about this a little bit. I guess, I told you I get long-winded. We can talk about inspections because that was something that a lot of the therapists that worked for me kind of brought up. If we're waiting until they get kicked out, we may be missing the warning signs, right? So inspections are important. We have to hold those boundaries, right? In some ways, we are recreating a parental system for those who have a parental system that failed. So we are acting like mom and dad here. If you don't clean up your room, you're going to get in trouble. But that's part of healing that broken parental attachment. But a good parent will notice some steps along the way. It's like, man, they're showing up stinky. I bet their apartment ain't looking good either. So having strong boundaries. And that doesn't mean being confrontational, but that means being very consistent about the rules and being the same way every time. One of the biggest problems I see in my family therapy sessions are parents with inconsistent rule enforcement. And we know from studies and from the research, it's like playing the lottery, or it's like playing the slot machines in Vegas. Sometimes I win, sometimes I don't. And I don't know when the sometimes is gonna be. Leads to addiction. I get addicted to that, pulling that lever on the gambling machine, right? So if I'm inconsistent with my reinforcement, I'm kind of setting up a gambling addiction sort of thing, but with me. Well, maybe he's gonna be mean to me today, maybe he's not, maybe he's gonna be excited to see me today, maybe he's not. And so it creates this roulette of relationship, which we don't want to do. And then something I want to talk about, there's not like a set thing to this, but I'd like to explore and get some feedback. If you want to talk to me afterwards or kind of give some feedback, I would really be interested in even just personally kind of financing, like, are we rewarding them for clean rooms? how are we having not just negative consequences, but
Right.
positive consequences? Because the research is very clear that positive rewards are much more effective ways to change a person's behavior than just the negative.
Yes.
So, interesting. But that's all I got for today. You got questions?